It's a good piece. Without further ado, Mr. Town Administrator, rules for the day, let me just go over it. And as you know, I've sent you a number of questions that the committee members compiled at their meeting last week. Hopefully, over the course of the day, we'll address as many of those questions as possible, as well as your presentations by your department heads. As far as the rules, we will operate as we always do. Everything will come through the chair. However, unlike most times in the past, there's a lot of questions to be asked here, and the members are going to be free to ask them. And I would hope that the department heads would answer as many of those questions as possible. We also do reserve the right to ask department heads to come back if we feel that today's time is inadequate for our understanding. And I'd like to emphasize that the whole purpose of this meeting is for our understanding, which means we may ask some questions that some people may feel sensitive to, or if they don't have information, they should clearly say, I don't have it, I'll get back to you. If it's sensitive, I'm sorry, but we need to understand what we're looking at. In many cases, there's line item identifications, etc., that we're not familiar with. There's classifications that we know of. So I will be allowing my members a great deal of latitude in questioning today. To the members of the committee, please let's stay to the budget. Let's not deal with day-to-day operations or how departments are run. All right, but let's make sure that we address every major expense that needs to be addressed. And if you have any questions or you don't understand anything, please let's get it to the table, because you're probably not alone. That said, so we understand the ground rules.
Mr. Chairman,
you're first on the agenda.
I want to say thank you to both, not only you, but two former chairs that are here today, Ronk and Dick Paulson. This is really, from what I consider in my tenure, a very important process of unifying the budget process. When I first came here, you might recall, there were two sets of forms. They were due in triplicate. There were more processes and duplication of time and effort than you could shake a stick at. So I feel very good that we've made progress moving forward with regards to a unified budget review process. Every department has provided to the administration and to the Finance Committee under Section Article 5 of the Charter the appropriate documentation, and it will change, as we know, but this is a starting point, it's not an ending point. I'd like to make a couple observations if I could. First is that I hope you all have my budget message. I really took the time to try to present, pursuant to the charter requirements, the state of the economy from a national, regional, state, and local standpoint. And in it, I paraphrased certain parts of the Massachusetts Taxpayers Foundation report recently came out entitled on December 7th, Municipalities Weathering the Worst Two-Year Stretch Since Passage of Proposition 2.5, and we know now that that's obviously over 30 years ago. So we are at a critical juncture, as many other cities and towns are. The report indicated that the cities and towns that they have done an analysis of have really maxed out their resources to the degree that they're finding it extremely difficult to find additional revenues locally. Many of us are still trying to do that. We are hopeful that the state revenue picture is improving. There's also parts that I've cited there that there are bright spots at the state level for revenue collections over the first months of fiscal 2012. As we all know, an automatic reduction in the state's personal income tax may occur, given that that standard fare, if you will, for what the state legislature has adopted and the governor signed, so that that will, by the way, decrease fiscal 2012 revenues at the state level by $60 million, and you double that for next year, so it's $120 million. So that may be part of the equation going forward as we look and watch very carefully what local aid might look like. I've been in touch with contacts in the legislature, in the House Ways and Means Committee, and as you all know, most of you will be attending as I will the Mass Municipal Association meeting next week. The governor is primed, I believe, to give us some indication as to what not only local revenue, unrestricted local aid might look like, but also what school aid might look like under Chapter 70. So if I could just continue, I just wanted to challenge the leadership team, all of the directors of all the departments, to bring strategic planning into the budget process. This is for the second year. It's a critical element in bringing new and creative budgetary and strategic thinking to maximize the limited resources that we have. I also will continue to seek your advice, your counsel, the Board of Selectmen's advice and counsel in molding a solid financial blueprint for fiscal 2013, which we'll be working on in the next several months. Just a couple of highlights on the revenue side, if I might, Mr. Chairman. We have budgeted conservatively local revenues at 1% below the fiscal 2012 level. And that's something that we've done for the second year in a row. We also are maintaining projections for local aid for both Chapter 70 and general government local aid. And the reason for that is that I don't feel that we'll see cuts in these areas. I feel that we might see some modest increases. We'll have to wait and see what the governor's message is as he presents that later on towards the end of the month. And once again, hopefully to get a signal at the Mass Municipal annual meeting coming up next week. We've also drafted, once again, very conservative revenue projection. We'll continue to use smart growth. An example of that would be the additional $96,901 in new growth. A significant portion of that came from the conversion of a cranberry bog into the Rosebrook Medical and Business Office Park. So I feel very solidly, I see Chairman Cruz is here to my left. We've walked that site when it was just structural steel going up, sheetrock went up, businesses moved in. I talked with the Mike Hogan from Makepeace last week. They're fitting up their last tenant for that building, and they're planning a second building that is going through the permitting process. That's the type of growth that we need. That's the type of new conversion from that open bog to a $10 million project, if you will, that not only brings important local revenue through the tax base, but also creates jobs for local Wareham residents. So once again, new growth is pegged at increased $96,901. I am awaiting a letter from the Board of Assessors confirming that, but from the work papers that have been provided through the assessing department, that is what we have built into the budget. We also have levied to the maximum level allowed by Proposition 2.5. So we've done what we can to build the local budget revenue into the fiscal 2013 budget process. On the expenditure side, if I could, Mr. Chairman, funding collective bargaining agreements and other personnel expenses has been one of the charges that was put to me when I was first hired. We had 11 out of 11 contracts that had lapsed at least 3, maybe 4 years that were really an outstanding item. At some point, they'd become a liability on our balance sheet because at some point you have to catch up. And I'm proud to say right now that we have 9 out of 11 collective bargaining agreements have been signed to catch up to fiscal 2012. What is left, one unit in the library made up of 2 members, and the United Steelworkers Union made up of the departmental managers and clerical staff, and we're hopeful that we can get those contracts settled. We've already begun the fiscal 2012 negotiations. As the committee may or may not know, you can only do it in 3-year increments. So we have caught up from the prior years into fiscal 2012 with 9 out of 11 of those contracts and put the resources in place that were funded at town meeting and in subsequent budgets. And so I feel very good that the human capital of the town is being upgraded to the degree that we're catching up with our collective bargaining agreements and making efforts along those lines. The second area, you can see pursuant to a policy devised by the Board of Selectmen, We have increased the funding of the stabilization account by $50,000 from $150,000 to $200,000. This is the third year in a row we've put extra money into the stabilization account to build it back up for, once again, stabilization for the future.
Mr. Andrews, if I may interrupt you, we now have 5 members for a quorum. That said, I'm opening the meeting as of 9:25 in attendance, Mrs. Catulli, Mrs. Bronk, Mr. Paulson, Mr. Trudell, and myself. Thank you. Continue.
Thank you. We've funded debt service, and the treasurer collectors seated to my right will, I'm sure, get into some detail about that, at $272,575. We've funded our retirement contribution, which increased by a 16.74% increase, which amounts to $392,113 per the requirements of the state county system. We've funded health care at the catch-up to the of $1.1 million, $1,180,765, or an increase of 28%. And per town meeting vote, last town meeting, we funded capital outlay at $386,114, with $100,000 set aside for the school district. And I'm going to ask Mr. Sullivan, I know we just got a report that we presented to the Finance Committee and the board that indicated that second quarter collections are on target. Is that fair to say?
They had increased to above 99% for the meals tax there, so it's trending in the right direction as far as we want it to go.
I've also presented funding for what I believe is a much-needed position that at the local level in my research and talking with other town administrators and town managers. I funded a personnel director's position. At one time in the past we had this position. I funded that at $50,000. We've also funded a mechanism for something called financial services, which speaks to, if I might, Mr. Chairman, I have it here somewhere, both the 2010 Department of Revenue report presented by the Bureau, Mr. Rick Kingsley and his financial team, pretty much mirrored the 2001 report. And if I could just read an adage from that real quick off the second page. In both reports, by the way, they pointed out that we needed to bolster our financial services areas and increase financial resources in a number of areas. And if I could just real quick, on the second page, excuse me, page 6 of the report, it indicated that in terms of its overall financial management, Wareham has the components in place to be effective. The absence of a town administrator at that point, this is from 2001, caused them some concern, and persistent computer problems have slowed the process, but at the same time these events have prompted the town to look at how it functions, as well as its relationships between and among offices, boards, and committees. And so I can paraphrase other points, but they pretty much both documents say that you really need to have sustained leadership from the top down, and that includes the financial services area, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but it also includes professional services that Mr. Sullivan and other staff have given us and that are included in my proposed budget. And once again, it's almost like the reports mirrored each other to some degree within a decade's time. So I just wanted to point that out for the record. If I could go back into my report, I'll finish up in a second or so. We have presented, I don't have any formal recommendations from the Capital Planning Committee, but we're working very closely with them. A capital plan for the replacement of an ambulance at $150,000. The set aside for the school district of $100,000. A parking program that we presented to the Finance Committee, coupled with, by the way, an analysis of how do we get the onset pavilion back up to functioning as a solid asset for the town at $25,000, and we've included defibrillators at $36,114 for every police vehicle that we have in the police department. On the expenditure side, just to point out a couple points, we are working on a new code enforcement program. There are too many buildings, Mr. Chairman. It's stymieing economic growth. I'll use one example. There was a building on Main Street with a big red X on it for about a decade. We've talked to developers. We know that they want to make productive investment, but they don't want to put their money into places where you have holes in roofs and windows that are blown out, and really not up to the code that we have in town. So I've charged Chief Stanley. I'm going to ask Bob Ethier, our health agent, and Miles Burke, our Director of Inspectional Services, to coordinate and co-chair with Chief Stanley's help a task force. It's in the formative stages. We're still doing research, but I'm going to call it the dirty dozen, because we're going to take a dozen buildings at a time, some of which the town owns, which is not something that we want to advertise, and get those buildings into a position to get them down in the budget, or somehow cleared up, or working with the tax collector, Treasurer Foster, some way to get them back onto the productive tax rolls of the town. So this new code enforcement task force, I've earmarked $25,000 for the demolition of derelict or blighted properties that are impediments for our new growth in town. And that's a revolving account. I don't care if the money comes from the insurance company, comes from a property owner, comes from somebody's family member. We've got to get these buildings into a position where we can get them down and get new buildings up if we can. We've also, once again, on the expenditure side, just to give you the last part of the update, maximized our efforts with regards to community development block grant funding. We have put aside $770,000 for the revitalization of Wareham Downtown Improvement Program, which includes walkways, roadways, lighting, street enhancements, historical elements, benches, trees, and plantings to attract new businesses and development in Wareham Downtown, and to create jobs and to bring productive investment to the town. This is the first phase that got kicked off this fall. The work crews have stopped their work over the winter months, and will start back up in the springtime. So that's an overview, Mr. Chairman, of the budget message from the town administrator. I'm happy to answer any questions. In my budget, I just want to say to you that I have upgraded two positions, one being my administrative assistant, Barbara Marcosa, who has taken on additional responsibilities in the area of collective bargaining, given the fact that we have settled 9 out of 11 contracts, and we'll be very busy working to get new collective bargaining agreements in place going forward, and a number of other financial issues that Ms. Marcosa is working on, and as well as the position of financial analyst, Mr. Sullivan. We have increased his position to really formalize it, if you will, pursuant to what the Department of Revenue has instructed the town to do. You know, when you ask for these reports, I just want to make this clear, lots of times they just sit on the shelf and collect dust. We are, I'm proud to say, along with the Board of Selectmen, making strident efforts to put the proper tools in place for the departments to function. And these are two areas in the my budget area that, once again, I'm happy to answer any questions about, but these are two positions that I am formalizing as we are moving forward in the field, in the area of financial management, and hopefully making some positive steps going forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, Mr. Chairman.
On this point, I would suspect we basically should address the issue of the selectmen, town administrator offices. You have wage and expense requests. Town meeting, I believe, is under the town clerk, isn't it? Or is that under you?
Under town clerk.
Yeah, town meeting is on the town.
All right, if we could address those particular departments, if you could give me a recap on what you're doing in the selectmen side, and then what you're doing on the town administrator side. I believe members do have questions.
Sure thing. In the selectmen's office, we have, I believe, one upgrade for one of the staff persons, and I believe a step increase for another.
Yeah.
Correct? And we also have conferences that pretty much amount to $3,250 that make up if every member of the Board of Selectmen went to, I don't believe that there have been any out-of-state conferences, but certainly registration and work at the Mass Municipal Association conferences, that comes to my mind. And just really pretty much level funding and modest increase, going from 123,496 in fiscal 2012 to 131,867. Mr. Chairman, I was remiss. I just want to make certain that people understand that all the departments will be increased between 3 and 5%, depending upon the collective bargaining units. And you could have clerical staff, as we do in the Selectmen's office. You could have steel workers, union staff, which is a pending agreement. But you could have multiple collective bargaining agreements that call for certain increases that brought us up through fiscal 2011 that have to be funded in fiscal 2012. So a couple of modest increases there for both the departmental assistant and the department assistant 3. So we have a department assistant 4 and department assistant 3 with a step for total. Yes, okay, so we have both those positions and a vacant position, which was formerly an assistant to the Board of Selectmen at $52,000 that is still, that remains unfilled at this particular time, for a total of $124,892.
Any questions? Well,
The parking program, are we going to have that in place? Are there actually going to be fees collected from the parking lots this coming summer?
It's a great question, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Paulson. If you recall, I tried to make the point, because we didn't have the additional revenue from the state, came a couple days later. But this budget will take effect, as you know, on July 1st. We have a parking program that is ready to go. I'm set to get that program up and running so that we would be collecting something between there and hopefully Labor Day or into September. I can't say for certain, because I can't say that we can convert all of the current parking systems and install the kiosks and the software deck and the other things that go with that. But the idea is that to have a full season in place from, say, Memorial Day to Labor Day would be the objective. And I've also talked with capital planning members, Mr. Terrell, to couple that with the use of the pavilion, because I think the pavilion can be also a draw where you can get to a lavatory without having to walk up to the bluffs. You can get some of your items stored while you're on the beach. You might be able to get a can of soda and a cheeseburger or something. So that's a longer range position to help assist in the parking. But the idea would be, if the money is available on July 1st, my goal is to move that program forward. So we'll be collecting something, Dick. I can't say how much, because I don't know what the construction and the installation timeline would be, except to say we try to get it done as quickly as we could.
So I might just pursue this a little bit further. The money that's being asked for, would this be the money for the construction?
The $75,000, the lion's share of it, I think about $73,000 or $74,000 of it, is for the installation of the kiosks, signage. Remember we presented, it was actually the lot plans. And this is phase one. Phase one includes getting automation into the onset pier and the C.W. Bishop parking area, which is up above next to the park, and would include each meter would cost approximately $12,000. There's other $3,000 for other parts. $10,000 for the bollards and concrete bases, that had been indicated to and, presented to not only the Finance Committee, but to the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, the $75,000, if I'm understanding you correctly?
Yes.
We put the system in place, ready to go.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I know you have, if I could, been a strong advocate for parking, not only in the onset area, but across the town.
Well, to use the expression jumpstart, which is probably appropriate for this time of year, is there no way to jumpstart this to get this in place so that we have it for the full season? And we're talking obviously about a lot of money here, in terms of, not just in the capital sense, but in terms of the revenue.
It's a good point. I would certainly entertain, Mr. Chairman, through you, Mr. Paulson, some form of an emergency Finance Committee appropriation to get this going sooner rather than later, and doing some type of just offset the receipts back into the finance accounts, or however you want to do it, into the new fiscal year. Because it would be difficult. You can't put out a contract publicly under Massachusetts law unless you have the finances and the appropriation in place. But, if we could work together to get this going up and running by Memorial Day weekend, if that's even possible, sometime in May or, early June, that would be the optimal part of it. And, and as we're visited, I know members have been to Plymouth, and I've been from Portland, Maine to Newburyport, right down the coast, Hampton Beach. People don't mind paying for something that they know costs something, to keep it clean, to keep it striped, to keep it working, and they pay. And so, to the gentleman's point, if there's some way to work it out sooner rather than later, I'm happy to get it started.
We're going to take a look at it, but let's also be aware that it is a capital item, and capital items normally require a vote of town meeting. So to pull it out of the fund, I'm not sure that we're fully authorized. We can investigate it, we can look at it and find out what we can do. But I'm not sure that we have the authority to use it to purchase a capital item.
Well, if I could, Mr. Chairman, it's capital to the extent that we're adding things, we're adding kiosks, but a lot of the systems and work are just adding to the existing parking, infrastructure, if you will. We could certainly explore that, but I do appreciate Dick's point, because to miss this season, the idea was to try to get it to pay for itself in one season. To miss the season, we have a real hot summer, I'd be kicking myself not to get something going sooner rather than later. I appreciate the point.
I understand that. We can discuss it, going forward, et cetera. Like I said, it is a capital item. The other side is, I would hope that there will be a plan in great detail that the committee would be able to go over. I think this is a bit of a stretch compared to what's been used, that fund has been used for in the past. I'm all for revenue, you know that. I'm a firm advocate of it, but I also know that we're not free to do everything that we would like to do. We're going to have, but I'll be glad to look at it. I'll be glad to put it on the agenda one time, but I would expect that if we put it on the agenda, that you would have a full plan for us to sit and go through and understand.
Mr. Chairman, let me be very, very clear, because it's a phased plan where we're going to work on the onset pier and the CW Bishop parking lot, which, by the way, can be expanded. We've had the surveillance done through municipal maintenance, can be expanded. And then the idea would be to get to the other beachfront areas as quickly as we can going into the program, because right now we have people out that are working in the hot sun, where a piece of equipment could do the same thing at a reduced rate. And so it's a phased in. This is phase one of a long
All which you can bring, like I said, we can put it on the schedule whenever you're prepared to have it on our agenda.
Okay.
Any other questions on particularly the selectmen's numbers? Mr. Trudell?
I had a question regarding your capital paid by meals tax.
I think we're getting off the subject right now. Let's try to stick to, we're going to come to that, all right? And the thing is, what's going to happen is we're going to have department heads sitting here waiting 2 hours to get up. So we'll stick with it, try to stick to the particular expenses, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I just have a question about is this the administrator's wages and stuff?
No, the selectmen's.
Just the selectmen's right now?
We're working on the selectmen's right now.
Okay, that's fine. I'll hold my comment there.
I do have a question on, we're looking at a 7% increase. I'm not passing judgment on people's value, the value of the people in the various departments, et cetera, but that's a pretty substantially high increase compared to what's happening in industry. And I was wondering if you could explain to us why we're looking at a 7% increase in that wage number.
Mr. Chairman, and once again, if you don't have copies, I'll make sure the committee has copies, but we're following the roadmap that was outlined in both the 2001 and 2010 Department of Revenue report. And we asked for those reports. This wasn't something where they just came in and decided to do a report on the town. Both of those reports stress how woefully inadequate our financial resources have been. We only had a couple people in the accounting office. Now we have...
But I'm talking about the selectmen.
Right, oh, in the selectmen's department?
In the selectmen's department, we're looking at a 7% increase in the wage number.
Yeah, Mr. Sullivan will give you
I
the...
guess the real way we should probably look at that is if you look at the FY 2011 budget, it was at 154,000. So versus FY 11, we're still close to 29 to 30,000 below that. We're just bringing this to really where it is in line with the work of the people in there, and probably where any assistance to the selectmen really is. That was higher in the past, that position, and that's really more in line with what it should be.
Not seeing that. Okay, I'm seeing 120 that was approved in 2011, 459, and I'm seeing 124, 891 in 2013.
That's an increase of $4,000.
Unless I printed out my wrong copy from my book here. What do you have on?
I have 131, 867.
For FY Personnel Services, Selectmen budget, FY 11 budgeted, 153, 959.
I don't have that.
That's
Okay.
it's in the tab. Oh, in the second here?
Yeah.
Oh, in the tab.
See, that's what we've got conflicting numbers there.
I'll tell you about the FY 11 back in what we actually have from this sheet here, which is the line breakdown. Did you have that?
We have that, but this is the actual physical, supposedly the budget. I mean, we're working off the summary budget that you gave us, and we're looking at a number of FY 2011 appropriated of $120,459. And you're increasing to 124,891, or an increase of 7%.
Mr. Chairman, I believe it has to do with the classification of the departmental assistant. We'll get that information to you.
The position of the assistant, it was my understanding at one point that that money had been basically eliminated. The position was eliminated. Part of the money was used, I believe, for Mr. Sullivan's position, and then there was money used from another spot. Or you're saying that we've had an open position for the assistant?
That's correct.
To the selectmen?
That's correct. It's not Mr. Sullivan's position. It's a vacant position.
I thought part of the monies were used for Mr. Sullivan's position. So, all right, I'm not going to, I could very easily be wrong on that. You're saying you have an open position? Do you intend to fill that position?
The Board of Selectmen have an open position, Mr.
Do
Chairman.
they intend to fill that position?
They have looked at it, I've provided them with as much support. They have not indicated to me either way that they want to fill it or not fill it. It has been an open position for the time in which Mr. Sanjanet had left the town, and it has been open since that time.
Mr. Chairman?
Mrs. Brown?
I just have a question. Now, to you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Andrews, we have two individuals that are in the selectmen payroll,
That's correct.
Shirley Oldfield and Janet Wilson.
That's correct.
And are these numbers that are assigned to them, are they correct numbers? We have 124,891.
That's correct. But that includes also the open position. So there are actually three positions. The vacant assistant to the...
To $52,000.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then, I prefer not to use names if we'd be...
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, okay.
So we have a department assistant at 37,654, and we have a department assistant 4 at 37,654, and department assistant 3 at 35,236. For a total of, in that column, for those two individuals that are physically in the office, 72,891. And the thinking there, Mr. Chairman, was that, once again, not to keep citing the reports, but Ms. Oldfield, I've done it again, the Department Assistant 4 has had more time in service, and I think it's important to have a chain of command from top to bottom, so that if individuals aren't in the office, work would continue in such a way that would reflect what the Board of Selectmen would like to see. So if you take that 72 and change, Donna, do you, Mr. Chairman, and add the 52 in, you come up with the 124, 892.
All right, you'll get back to us as to why the 7% increase compared to last year's appropriation of $124.59 for wages, right?
Happy to, Mr. Chairman.
We could have a breakdown on that. I think we need to address with the selectmen. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cthulhu.
I just wanted to ask one question, and that is, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the town administrator, do you feel as the town administrator that we need an assistant for the selectmen? I hate to put you on the spot, but...
What time do you have? So, okay, it's almost 10 o'clock. It's a very, very good question. And I think what we've done, I know what we've done, is we've huddled, I just left the staff, the Board of Selectmen met into the evening to 11:30 last evening. We went over every part of what the board had asked to be done. We do that every week. So we have been functioning without a department assistant that staff has picked up. So basically, office staff plus Mr. Sullivan, myself, Ms. Marcosa, Ms. Green. Yeah, I'm using names again. I asked Donna not to use the names. All the other staff, I'll say, have pitched in to see if we needed to, if we could get through. And in my humble opinion, we have done pretty well. Anything that the Board of Selectmen has asked for, committees have asked for instance, the Department Assistant 4 handles the agenda, all the supplemental documentation, any other things that have to go into the board packet, working with the chairman, myself. This Department Assistant 3 works on boards, commissions, appointments that are part of the agenda, but that's a whole separate bailiwick, keeping that all straight with the clerk of the Board of Selectmen. So it's been kind of a cross-functional, fertilization, if that's the right term, to let the staff do their thing. And I can't say we've been hindered. I'll have to say that to you, because we've worked through that process. But it certainly is up to the Board of Selectmen to say to the town administrator, hey, we'd like to have our assistant do whatever, tons of research or do some other stuff, and the position would be there for them to use it. It was never eliminated, it's been there, but we've been getting through it by working very, very closely and cooperatively.
May I follow up?
Pardon?
May I have a
Sure.
follow-up? So basically what you're telling me is that the selectman's office and the town administrator's office, those two staffs have been working in coordination to get the job done that this person would fill, is that right?
You are correct. And if I could, just one sentence on that. When I first came here, they were on opposite sides of the universe, which doesn't make any sense to me. One was on one side of the world, down with the planning offices, and one was in Sleepy Hollow, we'll just call it that, down where I am. And it doesn't make any sense to keep, to have them polarized. It makes sense to have them work together as closely as you can. And then, of course, I have other duties and responsibilities, and the chairman of the board and the board have their own responsibilities. But I think working together would not only maximize our resources, but also the space that we have.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Brown?
I just have one more comment, Mr. Andrews, and that $52,000 position that we're leaving vacant, we're leaving that money in. I have a problem with that because you guys have been working very closely and very well with it in these economic times. And I look at all the other budgets and we're, like the Treasurer's Department, we're cutting, where there's no increases, and that's where we generate our cash to get more money. So I have a real problem keeping a $52,000 position in an administrative position when we're cutting in areas that are also very desperate. I think we're sending the wrong message to the other folks. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just go quick. I don't disagree, Donna, but I'll say this to you. When you hear the overall plan for what I have for the Treasurer's Department, including the financial services stipend, I think you have a better picture, so if you could just reserve
Sure.
at this point.
Sure.
Hey, you know what? We've gone with, they tell me years ago, we had a chief procurement officer, not here anymore. We used to have a personnel director, not here anymore. So we have done what we could to pick up what we needed to. We didn't slow down on procuring, we didn't slow down on people issues, so your point is well taken. I can't speak for the Board of Selectmen, I can speak for the town administrator, and like, as I've indicated to Bonnie, that I feel we've worked together to put the agenda together. Hopefully there won't be too many 11:30 meetings in the future, but we've tried to make it work efficiently and effectively with the staff that we've had. But I do appreciate your point.
And you have brought in young professional help that you can start them up the ladder, which,
Who might that
to
be?
Dick Paulson's point of view and all of us, bring some young people in and pay them less and you'll get good quality folks to work up.
I've heard that before, and it's a very good, it's a solid accent. But I'm not sure what young people you're referring to.
I'm referring to Garrett.
Okay.
A lot younger when I started.
We're gonna have to do before and after like they do with the president, Mr. Chairman.
One quick last question on
Sure.
on the assistant position. Is that union or non-union?
You know, Derek just mentioned that it was under contract, but I believe it is a unionized position.
It is a union
We'll have to check
position?
with the steelwork, we'll have to check with the steelworkers list.
Okay, fine. Can we move on? Any other questions on the selectmen side? Yes. Pardon?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, if it's about the selectmen's.
Well, it actually is. So, was this in the 2012 budget, the assistant to the selectman?
That's correct.
Have we used it for anything at all?
It's been a vacant position since the individual left
I know,
us.
but we haven't used the money for it for anything.
We have just recently hired a part-time person to help us do some typing and some word processing from that position. When the board fell behind in its minutes and we needed to catch up, that's been the extent of it.
Was that a temporary hire, or was that a...
Temporary.
Okay, that's that.
Just to get caught up, Larry,
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
No further questions on the town administrator side? Very quickly. Are there any questions on the town administrator's wages or expenses?
My only comment is that they've gone up and other folks haven't gone up.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I try to stress this in the beginning, and you're going to find it throughout the budget. As we settled the collective bargaining agreements for individuals, and some people are hitting steps, you should have a worksheet that describes that for you, for both the individuals that work with me, and once again, I'm formalizing the financial analyst position into an area that I believe is supported, and then you have once again projections. It may not come to fruition, but my contract needs to be. We have to put in the appropriate dollars to cover the projected costs for the town administrator's contract, and unless I'm it's pursuant to those steps that are listed on your sheet. I hope you have. If you don't have it, we'll get it for you. And once again, contractual obligated items that are projections. Doesn't mean we're going to spend the entire amount. They're projections that need to be set aside.
Any other questions, Mr. Katsouris?
Just quick verification of your, the $25,000 financial services stipend?
Yes.
So that'll be carried into the town administrator's budget, am I correct in that?
No, it will be dispersed through the treasurer collector's area.
And I'm a little confused.
Where does the stipend fit in? I think that's one of our biggest questions.
The stipend is devised to, once again, get to the nitty-gritty of what the Department of Revenue has asked us to do. In most cities and towns, you have a financial services director that serves between and above the treasurer collector and the town accountant. We haven't had that position, and it was referenced back over a decade ago, Mr. Chairman. So when Mr. Foster comes up here, you might start to blush a little bit. I'm going to ask him to take on some new and different responsibilities as it relates to financial services between the new town accountant and his area. And we have a plan for that. So if I could just ask the indulgence of the committee, we'll get into it in a minute or so as soon as we're done with my budget.
Can I ask one more?
Yes.
And maybe this is more of a general question, but it has to do with that as well. Are you going to ask something, Dick? I didn't.
No.
Collective bargaining agreements. I guess it'd be easier to ask, how many positions in this town are not union positions? That's probably an easier step for me, because I'm looking at...
3.
Okay, that's what I wanted.
Town administrator.
Instead of saying how many are, it's easier to say how many aren't.
Which 3? Town administrator?
Town accountant and the police chief.
I thought the town accountant was.
No.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Then maybe we should move on. We'll wait.
Is that we are woefully behind on getting local revenues. We're trying hard, we're running as fast as we can, but in many cases, we've got antiquated schedules for fees and services, and I'll be bringing a package in through the Board of Selectmen, through the Finance Committee. Mr. Foster will speak to one of those items that virtually pays for the financial services stipend, unless I'm missing something, on an annualized basis, about $26,000.
Yeah, we would bring in $27,000.
So the idea here, and he's done some valuable research on, I'll turn it over to John, to give you an idea as to what other communities are paying for municipal lien certificates. And John, maybe you want to go into that first? Or?
Yeah, this is actually a direct result of 2 different things. Mr. Andrews asked us to review our fees to see if we're in line with other communities, and the other thing was something Jim Heath brought up regarding return envelopes, which is part of our expense budget. So I made some calls, or we made some calls, actually my staff made some calls, called every city and town in Plymouth County. The MLC is charged, obviously if you go down the list, there are 4 communities that charge the minimum fee of $25. We are one of the 4 communities. Most of the communities charge $50 or more. Some charge up to $200 for their commercial properties. So this was just for discussion purposes. This wasn't to vote anything, to decide anything at this meeting. Well, the Selectmen's meeting, I gave this to the Board of Selectmen last night. But it does show that we're in the low end of the MLC fees. 22 out of 27 communities issue quarterly tax bills. That's something, I'm not sure who brought that up at one point or another, but obviously most of the communities in Plymouth County have quarterly tax billing, and most have lockbox service. 14 out of 27 issue return envelopes. There's a cost to that, but most of those communities that you see that, if you go down the list and you see who's checked off for return envelopes, most of those communities also have lockbox service. That's why I included that. The reason for that is you want to take advantage of your lockbox service and have the mail directly to them. If you don't include the envelopes, you're probably going to be getting a lot of mail coming to the town hall, which obviously puts more burden on the current staff. And I also included 5 years of collections for MLC fees. The lowest year, 2011, $26,350 up to $34,225. And that's just for reference, that's just for your information. It really is a combination of questions that I've been asked over the past couple of months.
MLC being, I'm sorry,
Excuse me?
MLC being,
It's, if you get a mortgage, you're, before you close, they'll request the MLC. That'll give,
What
we
is-
have to do
what
the
does MLC
research and
stand
say, you know, you have a sewer lien, you have a outstanding taxes, you have paid your quarterly taxes. It's a separate printout that they'll record at the registry of deeds.
Municipal lien certificate, Mr. Chairman.
that's what I'm looking for.
Sorry, say that again?
Municipal lien certificate.
If I could just add one quick thing, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Most municipal lien certificates accompany a transaction of real estate. And it's included in the closing costs. And it's rather painless because the people who are buying the property want the property. People who are selling it know that obviously they're selling it. So it's part of the transaction to make sure that, correct me if I'm wrong, John, that pretty much the property is free and clear of any cloudiness on the project, if you will, or the property, so that they can go to a bank and get a mortgage. Is that fair to say? Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Wester.
As far as our budget, everything on this budget is the clerical increases, the treasurer and the assistant treasurer collector level funded from last year, and I believe that's where we were at the year before that. The two employees that, well, actually the clerical staff went up slightly with their contract negotiations. And the expenses are level funded, and there's a brief explanation of what each line item is on this other sheet that you have in front of you.
Do you have any questions?
I have So the payroll processing, that's for the entire town, that's not just for
School on time.
Okay, just want to make sure it was. The second thing is, I agree, we went up to $50, which is still nominal when you consider some of the other people. You've almost doubled your revenue fees at that point.
Right.
And
Well, you know, there's a lot of work that goes into an MLC, and there's a lot of responsibility for the people who do the work, because you can't mess up. You have to, it has to be accurate. It's going to be recorded. You know, we are in the lower end of the fees. You know, in the past, I've said that, you know, pretty much covered itself, but now they're heading in the other direction. We're not getting as many, but we still have the person doing the work.
well, you just answered my second question, which is, it looks to me like, from an overall standpoint, we're moving in the wrong direction here, we're not getting as many
Right.
in. So what does it take for you to increase the fee? Is that a town meeting vote?
Well, that was a question I asked to Rich Bowen, our attorney. He's supposed to be getting back to me. This is something we did this last week.
Right.
We passed I don't have it with me, Marianne was in the audience a little while ago. We passed the chapter and section, I think it's chapter 40, section 22F at a town meeting 4 or 5 years ago, which allowed the town to raise fees without having to go to town meeting. That was basically set up for the planning board so they could change their fees. And I asked him if this fell under that, because there are other statutes, there are other laws that reflect or relate to an MLC fee. And he said he'd get back to me. I had a couple emails back and forth yesterday.
So town meeting coming up, you know, we need to do an an article, so someone needs to do an article.
Well, the other communities, when we went through this, other communities, they actually brought it to my attention. They said, hey, if you pass this chapter and section, and that's why I went back and looked in the prior town meetings that we had, because they had changed their fees based on that. So I'm- I think it was 40, chapter 40, section 22F, and I might even have a copy of it in my budget folder. I had it last night for the selectmen's meeting. I didn't think
No matter what anybody says, one of the issues in the town is revenue. And that's the biggest issue. We can increase the revenue, however, so slightly, but still move in that direction to increase our revenue. We're just making the right steps.
Right, it's not like we're on the high end of the scale. We'd be in the majority
Right.
of the other cities and towns.
Further questions?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. And staying on the revenue side, do we have an estimate of what land sales might mean this year and perhaps going out another year?
Probably about $100,000 this year. What we have, depending on if we close on a large group of properties that we're attempting to foreclose on right now, it could be over $800,000 the year after.
And that would compare to, what, say, the last median land sale that we had?
Around $200,000. That included tax possession as well. It wasn't just land. We just foreclosed on three properties, but two are houses. One has a family living in it. They're trying to get back into it. They petitioned land court to get back into the property, and we're trying to work with them as long as they pay all our fees and the attorney fees and everything. I'm not objecting to it. It was very close. We received the judgment right around the time they came upon some money, and they got the financing to help pay it off, so we're going to allow them to do that. The other property is an abandoned house. I went out and walked it with Mark Gifford. I can't see where the acceptable frontage was, but it was built years ago, so I don't know if that can be sold as a buildable lot. With the house is a rundown shack, but people buy those just to put a new house in the same spot. And the other one's a lot that may or may not be buildable. I don't know.
And
So that could actually go up this year. We own those.
And the senior work-off program, the revenue, I'll call it loss, but let's say the cost to the town of the senior work-off, which has always been kind of a curiosity to me as to what it does cost the town. Does that fall under your province, or was that?
It's been under different offices. It's been in administration, it's been in council on aging, it's been in assessors, it's been all over the place. And that's set, the town determines that. What you're going to set that senior work-off at, say it's $750 in a person, and how many people you're going to allow to be in the program. So you basically set it. It can be zero, it can be $100,000. It's set by whoever is governing the senior
Well,
work-off
that's really
program.
my question. What is the cost to the town of the senior work-off program?
Is it? $65,000
$65,000. So that would be
approximately.
$65,000, and it's $65,000, and it's roughly $600, with just around.
I think it's $750.
$750. That would be what, 100 people? Yeah, 100 people.
We can get the list, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'm
We
just
don't
curious.
have that.
That'd be 86.67 people.
How much?
87 people.
87, okay, roughly 100, okay, that's good, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Well, we're scheduled for the 25th for the public hearing. I think, that, I gave you a list ahead of time of questions that we had, particularly to the revenues. It's pretty extensive. Mr. Andrews, I'd like to know if we could have Mr. Foster at the meeting on the 25th to discuss the revenue questions. As I said, there were a substantial number. You have them. I'd like to put them on our agenda if he's available.
January. I'm fine with that, Mr. Chairman. Why don't we let Mr. Foster check his schedule?
Yes.
During the day, at night? Is it
It's at night. It's a 6:30 meeting. We'll also be having a public hearing that night. I think there's a lot of, there are a lot of questions on the revenue side. to help us understand. There's some questions as far as how we estimate growth, you know, the 2.5.
There's only one.
There's a whole number of different items. If we try to cover it now, we're going to, we might as well web out the rest of the day.
I have no problem coming to the meeting, it's just I have, at the end of the month, I'm not sure what day it is, I'm going to Boston with two of my sons for their annual medical.
All right, let us know. We have time, but I think we really, revenues are extremely important. I don't think it's a 10-minute conversation. Would everybody agree? We have a lot of questions, and rather than hold you up for this whole process, I'd like to do that.
That's fine, I can tell you before the
And
end of
then
the
let
day.
us know, right, whatever date, we'll fit you in. And we have from now until town meeting, so.
Okay.
Okay?
And I just want to thank you for everything you do.
You're welcome.
Anybody know?
Good morning, and I want to thank all of you for your dedication as the committee you serve on. As I know that you're not paid heavily for that, and it's a lot of intense labor. And I appreciate the time to come before you. I'm sorry, Elsa Miller, Director of Assessing. I'm sorry. I came on board in the end of June.
Yeah. Okay.
If you could just recap your budget real quickly, we appreciate that.
I'm sorry, I didn't
So
hear
if you
you.
would recap the budget really quickly. Pardon?
I was just reiterating what you were, Mr. Chairman. You're hard to hear sometimes.
I apologize. Obviously, the number that stands out the largest in your department is the huge decrease in expenses. If you would just touch upon that.
The huge decrease in expenses?
93%, according to the budget that we have.
2012, we had the town vote for the 152,000. Is that was for the revaluation that we just completed? That wasn't really a budget item. It shouldn't really be in here because it was a town meeting vote and it was held separately and encumbered. So when you come across the bottom line total expenses, that number of 152 should not be in there. That was a one-time, potentially a one-time use of our vendor to do our triannual revaluation. You didn't have an assessor and you didn't have an assistant assessor, or you had a part-time assistant. There were a lot of changes, and I guess it was decided to hire the company that runs our valuation system to do your triannual revaluation. But that was a town-voted item. That wasn't a budget item. Really could come out of my budget entirely.
I guess the point is the town meeting voted that into your budget
Right.
for it, so it wouldn't be voted in for this year, so there'd be, essentially, it would appear as if there's a 152,000 decrease.
Yeah.
Mrs. Brown?
I'm sorry, I didn't go through the chair. May I call you Elsa?
Yes, please.
I noticed that when you first came in, we had a lot of properties that were not, that had changed hands and that were not assigned. Therefore, we were getting a lot of tax bills out to incorrect people. Has your department caught up on that issue since you've been able to get there?
Mismailings?
No. You haven't had the opportunity to change when someone had sold a property. It wasn't changed in your office for a long time, and I've
It
noticed...
is changed immediately.
It is, I can
It's
see
changed
that, I can see
immediately,
that
but
now.
it isn't brought forward because of the Massachusetts general law that we maintain ownership as of January 1. In July 1, we can roll it over. That's really been a decision between a prior administrator. That's something that you would like to have addressed. I'm in favor of it being current and not in care of. But they go out in and in care of. That's something that should be rectifiable. If people don't notify us that they're moving, or particularly with the percentage of summer homes we have, I think that may be, and I'll look into that. We had a stack brought over to us yesterday. There's no reason for that, and I'll look into it. I was not aware that there were that many coming back. I just saw a little pack come back yesterday. So I'll look into that.
Has, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I have one more thing. Has the reevaluation caused any difference for a decrease in tax revenue coming into the town?
No, the market did, but it's not, the revaluation company had to use sales, the same as if you had had a full-time assessor. So the sales drove your tax, your assessment base. Sales were analyzed, we met DOR standard, everything was done and approved by the Department of Revenue. So the fact that we had an outside company come in and do the reval is not the reason why some of the assessments went up. We did have quite a few that went down. We did have some that went up. Is that?
My question basically is, I have a house in Bartlett, and my house was decreased, the value, and my tax rate was decreased too. Did this happen in Wareham? I mean, my taxes went down $300, I was shocked.
Well, our tax rate went up $1. That's due to the
tax
budget.
rate, okay.
I'll talk to you later, Donna.
Yeah. But the assessments were not necessarily wrongfully or rightfully applied by Vision, the outside company.
So the tax rate went up?
Tax rate went up $1. Some assessments went up, some assessments went down.
Okay. Overall, how did we come out?
About a -2%.
But that doesn't represent lost revenue because it's the tax levy from last year plus 2.5 divided
But
by
that's-
the assessed
yeah,
dollars.
yeah.
That's where the confusion comes from.
Growth is my area.
Right.
And that was quite high this year. I don't think
Both
we're going to
sides
see,
this
the 347,000?
On
It was
growth.
projected at 2 something. But that was an exceptional year. Only due to some new growth, meaning totally new growth in the new medical building, as Mark had mentioned. Mark had mentioned that the Cranberry Bog transfers, those occurred, and Rich Gonzalez had taken that growth the prior year. So what we realized this year was strictly, one of the major increases was that new building being built by Makepeace.
Any further questions?
I have a question. I'm one of the ones sitting up here whose assessment went up rather substantially. Well, that, understandable, perhaps. I have a neighbor who has 2 homes on the water. He's down here 5 days a year, that's a lot. He has no children going into our school system. His cost to the town is 0. And yet he's paying $11,000, he's paying $22,000 a year in taxes. And that's terrific from the town standpoint. It would seem to me that the town should want to encourage that kind of person to stay here as opposed to selling the home, bringing in perhaps children, putting into the school system at a cost. Is there anything that allows you or allows an assessor to take something like that into account? And I'm talking about me now, I'm talking about a summer resident who is not down here, who would like to encourage to stay because it's very beneficial to the town to reduce their assessment in some manner.
No, there's no mechanism in the legal law to abate, decrease, change a summer resident assessment. What will keep that person here is keeping the town having amenities and facilities for those summer residents to want to come here. And I do think that, as I saw in Hull, I see in some of the other waterfront communities, if you don't build and have a good basis for them to want to come here for the summer, a pier that they can access, the beaches that they can access, without skunks that I heard for the first 6 months of my time here in team meetings every week. So, no, there is no mechanism. That would be unequitable. And when Prop 2.5 came in, part of the reason of Prop 2.5 was to make it equitable assessments throughout the town, whether you were year-round or summer. So the mechanism to bring them and keep them here is to provide the services that they're looking for or wanting in the recreation, particularly recreation and storefronts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Cattouli?
Oh.
Just give us an overview of...
I was asked, the only thing I was asked to speak about was my goals and objectives for the next year. So I typed it up.
Okay, for those of us who are clueless as to what you're talking about here, what is vision?
Oh, Vision is the system that did the revaluation. It's our whole assessing system, assessments, changes, it's our program that runs the assessing department.
Okay, so this is software?
They're a
that you're talking
vendor,
about?
yeah. Mhm. They're the vendor that you paid the $100,000 to do the revaluation. They have appraisers on staff, and then data collectors, data entry people, and you utilize their services because you didn't have an assessor.
Any follow-up?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. McDonald?
So, keeping in technology, so vision is a system.
Yeah, yes, it's a system.
Right, and
It's a
Beta-
product,
it's a
vendor.
product, okay. Is it, so we also have Beta on here, which is our, I guess, townwide system.
Billing.
Okay. I'm just trying to...
Yeah, Vision strictly is my tool to generate the assessments.
Right.
It's what doesn't print your record card, but it's what generates that on your property record card. It's what generates the reports that help me realize where sales have gone up, what's gone down, whether capes are up, this neighborhood's down.
That's where the 152.
Well, we had this system. Administration chose to hire the company because you didn't have an assessor to do the revaluation.
So they just came in and used their own system?
Yes, yes. And they also provide us, I think it's in the IT department's budget, it's $7,000 or $8,000 a year for technical support, updates, technical support. And then there's $2,000 in someone else's budget for the web page that they put us on the web under Vision with all our data for the taxpayers at home and now everybody anywhere to look at.
So we will use this going forward?
It's been in place in the town, probably, well, you had an assessor that worked for them, at least 10 years. Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, no, I know, I guess I just assumed that I knew Vision.
I have just a question on the GIS mapping.
Yes.
Several years ago, a town official told me that he went into the then town administrator's office, and there was a very interesting chart, actually overlaid charts, of police activity in certain parts of the town. And it showed that there were areas of hot spots, if you will. And then we stopped doing that for some reason as a town. We had the equipment, but we didn't have the software updates. But it occurred to me then, and it occurs to me now, and I see you're talking here about GIS mapping, that there would be various departments that could benefit from using GIS. For instance, the police to do this again, if you will. Conservation. We asked Conservation several years ago if they knew the number of piers that existed around through all the waterways in the town. And they really didn't have a good idea. I would think GIS might be a way to delineate all the various piers that exist in town. For your purposes, and my question now is if GIS was available to you, how would it help your department to perhaps reduce expense or to be more accurate? I don't know exactly what the benefit is from your standpoint in terms of GIS.
Well, GIS really stemmed out of a group of assessors/appraisers as a method in which, and town planners, a method in which to do just what you're saying. And it has multiple layers, and one of the layers you're speaking about would be the police layer. There's a layer that could go to maintenance that they would know right down to, but this is very expensive, right down to which tree needs trimmed. It's a tracking system. For an assessor, it's my right hand. And I do have access to, through the state, they just sent us a letter, they finished their GIS, they did it for the whole state. They finished their GIS mapping layer, which would be my part. Matt Underhill also has another layer in there where I can go and look, but it's not totally functioning right now. I will this year work with the state that is apparently offering to us free. What it does for me is I can look at a whole section, I can put in my sales, and I can make that neighborhood right. And the other thing is the DOR asked us to value docks and piers. Do you know what it's like? I'd have to have a boat to go all the way around. You can't even get to them. So aerially, which I can do through Google now, anyway, there's methods around it. I'm a GIS certified user. I went to class at JFK several years ago because of my intrigue with how much it could benefit a town. It is very costly, but it'll benefit almost every department in this town in some way that works with real estate, maintenance on the streets, roads, every single department.
So would it be your considered opinion, and the town administrator sitting here, that perhaps it's been done, but would it be your opinion that it would be worthwhile for the various departments to get together that have a potential interest in this and sit down and have
Yes.
what we would call a game plan?
Yes, planning, conservation, myself, and probably somebody from maintenance or in that, I don't know how you're broken down in the town, but whoever would keep track of all your, I think that where it typically starts in the town is with the assessor because we have the database. So that database needs to merge with all the triangles and polygons. That's been done by the state. So now I need the time to get to the state and see just what kind of product they're offering to us for free. And then how do we springboard from that? But conservation planning and myself, if we're going to move forward, if the town is going to move forward with the rest of Massachusetts and be as competitive as it wants to be, GIS is an extremely important implementation, and it may be able to be done through just grants and the state.
Mr. Chairman, if I could also just add, we have to make some clear distinctions. What the assessing department needs is different from what the police department would need. There are programs out there called City Stat. Somerville led the way on this, which is to getting to Mr. Paulson's point. But I believe we need to get up to, I don't know of anything being turned off in my tenure. I want to make that absolutely clear for the record. But we need to get up to speed now that we have a full-time director of assessment, who, by the way, just on the 152 for vision, we've talked about if you have good interim years, is that the right term?
Yes, sir.
We should not be in the business of spending $100,000+ every triennial reval. We should be in the business of getting our interim years up to speed, so we're keeping track of the market movement, if you will, and then when the third year comes up and we have to go through the process, which we just went through, you're really positioned to get that done. But I believe what Dick has talked about, also areas of pictometry, which is a very important tool for economic development. It would be good to have all the buildings, all the space.
Well, that's part of the GIS
part of
now. Yep.
so we could showcase what the town has for vacant building space. People from all over the world can look at it. It's a very valuable tool. Now that we have a full-time assessment, director of assessment, also a town planner, I think Matt is doing cartwheels to make certain that we can use the GIS system to our best advantages.
Very good.
Very good. I have one quick question, and that is, without going into major detail, which is very easy to do on this subject, you're saying that there are radar capabilities that we're not using. Could you just tell us in general what those
Very
capabilities
quickly,
are?
I'm new to Vadar. I hadn't used Vadar
Right.
before, but I found it extremely encumbering to get through to the tax setting. There are parts in that system that I don't believe are being used. It's certainly not. I think it's just a matter of understanding what it has and then getting people trained.
Okay.
It'll resolve some of the issue you spoke about. Someone's asked me about mailings not going out. Most towns have systems like Vadar, similar, that would keep that maintenance up going all the time, and I don't believe it's being used. That's my fault at this point, because
Okay.
I've been here long enough to start to correct it. I learned through this revow that how much we needed that system.
Is there a cost to that training? Mr.
No.
Rand? Do we know? There's no cost from Vadar at all?
Yeah, no, Vadar's working, I'm working with Vadar to
Okay.
learn parts of it, and then what we need to know. I need to know first what it can do, of what it can do for me, in order to have the clerical staff enter it.
Any other questions?
Can I make an observation? And you just reminded me of something. There are several towns in the Commonwealth that use VADAR. When John Foster was here, he talked about talking to various towns about the fees they're charging. He said, talk to them. I'm wondering if it might not be a good idea to have everybody have an email list, so that if you have a question on VADAR, the VADAR question goes out to everybody who's interested in VADAR, but only the VADAR people in Massachusetts. Ditto for the town collector. That he doesn't have to, when I hear the word call, I see somebody at a phone calling and taking time to do it. If you can send an email to a distribution list, it's done in a matter of seconds. And that's just a suggestion, not to you necessarily, but just a general suggestion.
A helpline.
Well, yeah, that would be a discussion that whoever is in charge of the VADAR system would need to generate with VADAR's permission, but yes.
Well,
I think I'll connect with some of the people, that's an
Just a
excellent
thought.
idea. No, I'm going to
Just a
connect with
thought.
other assessors.
I think when Mr. Underhill's here, I don't know that VADAR should have a user group.
Well, I
Yeah.
mentioned in
They should have,
VADAR.
but I'm saying, they should have a user group.
Yeah.
It's there, I haven't had time pointing out that I need to do this.
Okay.
That's my goal.
Any further questions?
No, just thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I just, our budget is level funded, as you noticed.
Yes.
I don't know whether you were given the changed one where it added in some of the things that we requested, some of the things that are missing on this budget, like the gas and mileage for the assessors, assistant assessor and I.
There's been
No,
no
we've got no
changes since
adjustments.
December
We've got no-
15th, if I may.
What?
When the meeting that we had, Derek, and we talked about the lack of gas and oil expense, which is in the Wareham plan.
Correct, and what I'm
Has been
saying is
cut.
they were given a budget on December 15th. They've not been given anything.
And so RRC isn't on here, and then if you please note, I couldn't help but notice that there's a selectmen's budget for education, and our education has been cut. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I could, we will be making changes as needed, as departments have made points about mileage and other items, and so, Elsa's point is well taken. However, we submitted to you a balanced budget on December 15th. We'll be making modifications and keeping the committee and the Board of Selectmen updated. May I have a copy if you call this?
oh, growth. What did you predict growth at? Did you give them a number?
The number that you gave to me.
I didn't give you a number.
You
What
gave
number?
us 346,901.
That's last year. That's done, over with, gone. That's 12.
No.
13 isn't projected yet.
Well, the number that we're holding in there is the place setter, so that...
Well, 13, it will not be anywhere near that for 13. It'll be more like 100,000 in growth for 13. Fiscal 13's growth, if I was to project it today based on the permits I've reviewed and on-file applications and knowing what's happening, growth for fiscal 213 will be 100,000. That 347 figure is what we had in growth last year. That's done, grown, and on the tax rolls. That's not a projection. I couldn't hear Mark from behind him,
Well,
but I wanted to clarify that.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, the Board of Assessors needs to send to the administration their official number for new growth. They also need to send us the number for the overlay account. So I'll be requesting that information. It usually comes, correct me if I'm wrong, mid-January. So we'll know sometime in, I don't know when the next meeting is, but we should know what their official numbers are for both new growth and what they need for the overlay account, because the overlay account for this fiscal year was a triannual reval, and it's going to go down. It's going to go down from 410, probably closer to 300. So we're using estimates, if you will, until we get the official word from the Board of Assessors.
I didn't know there was a certain time. Is that
I
in a
can show
book
you.
somewhere, a policy?
It's in my budget book.
All right. This goes back to the whole discussion of the December 15th budget.
Well,
And trying to put
appreciate
a budget number out that fast. So I understand, yes, there's a problem.
Mr. Chairman, how do we send a tax rate if we don't know what the new growth rate is?
You set it, you're setting a tax rate for a year behind.
Prior.
We run a year behind.
Okay,
Okay?
yep. That answered my question.
Thank you all for your time. I look forward to meeting with you again, I hope.
Thank you.
You may want to check.
Good morning, all. Mary Ann Silver, Wareham Town Clerk. As you know, as Town Clerk, I have 3 budgets. Would be the clerk's budget, elections and registration, and town meeting. The clerk's budget, basically, there isn't any real increases other than the wages, and that's based on contracts. So it doesn't include the clerk. Clerk did not get a raise. It would be just the 2 staff that are in the Wareham Clerical Union. But basically, everything else I tried to keep level funded, as we were instructed to do. Elections is a different story. You know, it's a presidential year, so we have an election scheduled in October. Let me just find my schedule. Actually, they're all the 6th. It's amazing. We have a state primary September 6th, then we have the presidential election November 6th, and then we have our April 6th annual town election, 2013. Town meeting budget, I guess there was some question about the salaries because there was an increase. However, what I did is our town moderator kept the meeting in October to 2 nights. So for 2 nights, for all my staff, it came out to $920. The police department is separate from that item, and we paid the police, there were 2 police officers, $441.96 for those 2 nights. So I tried to keep it to a minimum. However, if there is a problem, and Claire has it pretty well down pat, unless we go a marathon, if there is an issue, I would come before you for a reserve fund transfer.
That would never happen.
I know. That would not in the town of Wareham.
Coming before us and getting it could be 2 things.
Yeah.
I thought there was the town meeting expense was extremely optimistic in light of the budget.
We try to remain optimistic, that's what we try to do. I also, I did get the amounts for the advertising, and it was, it came out to $3,030 for October to advertise the warrant.
Okay.
So, I'm trying to convince Mr. Andrews to put it in 1 newspaper rather than 2. But I'll work on that.
Okay. Wasn't that also part of the fact that there was a problem, one paper missed it, and that caused a delay in the town meeting or something? Is that part of why we went to 2?
Well, they were late, yeah, putting it in the newspaper. But he uses 2, he's trying to balance it out, but the rules say 1.
We'll say 1.
We only need to put it in one newspaper of general circulation,
Okay.
so.
That's 2. What was your, I'm sorry, any questions?
I just, you said you didn't get an increase because just your 2 department heads. Is that because you have to go before town meeting for yours?
No, usually I would come to Mr. Andrews and tell him that I wanted a raise, but it was explained to me that we were level funding everything. So that's why I didn't ask for a raise.
Oh, she's sweet.
Yeah. My husband didn't feel that way, but anyway.
Don't let her deceive you, she's taking stock options.
Yeah, I wish.
Mr. Paulson?
So I have one question. I think this goes back perhaps 2 years where you were in the process of digitizing your records or some of the records. Where does that stand now?
Well, Nancy Miller, actually, because I went on vacation for 2 weeks, Nancy Miller had given me a proposal because she wanted to work with me on it. Because we can go through CPA for the funding. However, as you all know, CPA, it hasn't been the greatest as far as funding. So that is pretty well what's delayed going forward with that. But Nancy Miller has been really great. She wants to work with me, and we will be working on that.
But I thought we had appropriated some monies at town meeting a couple of years ago to take at least some of the records and either take them, or their equipment was going to be brought in here.
No. What we did was, you took money to revamp my safe. My safe was revamped.
I remember that, but I don't want to deliberate and say no, it's no. But I'm almost certain that something was done.
Wasn't through my office.
I thought that you had talked about in the future trying to do this.
Right, through CPA.
But I do recall the safe.
So do I.
The only other thing that appears on my radar was the cost of this birth certificate business that she was going through last year. But other than that, I don't recall.
You'd know, certainly.
I would also caution members to please speak up, because the acoustics are pretty bad in the room, so I was multi-directional. If we're too soft, they don't pick it up, and I hear about it from the public. Mr. Trudell?
Could you review again to me the election dates that you're facing this
Sure.
year? I apologize for the time here, but it's important to me.
We have 3 elections in for the fiscal year 2013. It's the state primary on September 6th, 2012. Presidential election is November 6th, 2012. And our annual town meeting would be April 6th, 2013. And just to let you know, the September 6th primary was moved, because it was supposed to be, I think, September 18th or something like that, and they moved it up to September 6th. And please keep in mind, I know this budget has increased, but we have now gone back to 6 polling locations. So we've gone back to the schools, which means now I have to have officers, where before I had them combined, it will now be separated. So
You were saying precinct 4 and 5?
are going to remain at Deacon's. And precinct 2 will now go back to Hammond. Precinct 3 will go back to Minot Forest.
If I might, why was that done? I'm just curious.
Why was it?
Why did, we used to go to the Minot at one time, then the
Right.
Veteran Forum Ward, that was just fine, it didn't seem that crowded. Now we're going to go back to Minot.
Well, what happened was, I was approached by Mr. Rabinovich and Mrs. Fernandez at the time. That was about 4 years ago. They asked me to remove my precinct from Hammond School. There was talk about not having enough room in the school, so it's a lot of work to move a precinct. So my feeling was, if I was going to move precinct 2, I might as well move 3 also. Because if they were asking me to vacate one school, chances are they were coming to ask me to vacate a second one. So that's why that change had occurred.
And now there's been a change in sentiment?
Well, because now he's, after it was brought out in the public that we were being evicted from Deacon's, he decided to work with me, which was a good thing.
Good, okay.
It's
good.
public buildings, so.
All right, that's terrific, thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Petroli?
How has your revenue been different since now? Has there been any change since you can't do passports and all of that anymore? Do you feel a loss there at all?
Well, it's a little bit of a change, but we do so well with the vital records, because that's our main draw, that I really don't pay attention, because what we were bringing in with passports was probably about between 20, I think it was about 15, 20,000 a year, when you did well. but it wasn't definite. Do you know what I mean? There would be some years where we would do very well with passports, and then the post office also does them, so it would depend. So we really don't miss it, and we're also now not selling hunting and fishing licenses. That ended as of December 31st, but that was a very small revenue, so.
Any other questions? Mr. Trudeau?
In both your office and the elections, there's other purchase services. I don't know if you touched on that already, but that involves the police department or?
No, you're talking about the account for other purchase services. Okay, for elections, it would involve the touch marks machines, the coding of the AccuVote machines.
So we don't own those machines?
Well, the state has given them to us on loan,
Oh, okay.
but it is our responsibility to code the cards.
Got it. Thank you.
And you said for the clerks?
Yes.
Okay, for the clerks, other purchase services would be the bonds. We have to be bonded. We purchase the Hasco Tag Company for the dog tags. University Products, which is our books to put our vital records in. You have to keep them in the, I'm trying to think of the name. It's the resistant.
Acid-free.
Acid-free, thank you. So we have, and those are expensive. That also includes my associations, and that's it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Cap his budget for us.
Yeah, I
and,
think so. I think Matt's pretty
salary
well
points,
depth for his budget.
And then we'll ask him lots of questions.
All right. We met last night with the town administrator and Derek to review my budget before we met with you. In my original request, I had included, as far as salaries, a full-time assistant. We had discussed in Derek's budget here, we've included a part-time. The sheet that I handed out is actually a breakdown of each line item and all the detail that makes up each line item, whether it be, maintenance, what that maintenance is for, what the software is for, what vendor it is, application, to help at least yourselves make your decision on the budget. As far as the budget itself, pretty much I tried to keep level funding for everything, with the exception of, if you look at my sheet, the areas that are highlighted in orange actually are areas that pertain to the new virtualization project that we're trying to wrap up. It's additional software licensing that and equipment maintenance that we're now going to encumber going forward. The only one that we're not going to, is only a short term, is the Microsoft Office piece, the Microsoft, licensing, the $62,000 increase in that. What that is the actual cost for the licensing of the project ended up being, $170,000. Unfortunately, the vendor only included in their proposal, 1/3 of that. So when we spoke with Microsoft and Mark Andrews, the decision was made to see if we could, extend that licensing over a time period. In this case, we did it over a 3-year installment. The first year being included in part of the project, and then the next 2 years would be added to the budget. Year 3, that figure would drop down. Microsoft wouldn't give me an exact figure, but their going price right now is somewhere just under $20,000 to keep our licensing up to date with Microsoft. The important piece of that is the fact that with this licensing, if we keep up with it, As new software comes in, we'd automatically have access to that without having to repurchase it. For instance, right now we got Microsoft Office 2010 is what we're implementing. As soon as the new version comes out, we'd automatically get it. Current going price is $400, our price, $400 per user, times 100 users, 200 users, that's $200,000. As long as we keep up with that software assurance licensing, we wouldn't have to encompass those types of expenses again. Other than that, everything else, is broken down on that sheet. Other purchase services, the website goes to our virtual town hall vendor, permitting, betterments, our software with our financial vendor, Vadar. That's their annual maintenance costs are all included in there. The areas that are actually highlighted in blue on there are actually areas that we do hit the school back on when it comes to net school spending at the end of the year. So depending on what the decision between administration and the school is on the percentages, the town does get a portion of those areas highlighted in blue. We do get returned back to us through net school spending. Other than that, the budget itself, at least for the IT department, is pretty much the same as last year, with the exception of the areas highlighted in orange, which are pertaining to the new equipment that we are in the process of implementing now.
Questions? Questions, Mrs. Cattouli?
Thank you. Just under your orange highlights here, you explained the software licensing. Can you just briefly explain the other two so I understand what they are?
All right.
Citrix and the whatever.
Citrix is the application that we're using. Actually, it's for Vadar. We currently use it now for our Vadar application. What that is, that allows us to make the application web-based. In this case, we're able to access financial applications via the web. In this case, we've just increased the number of users from the 20, 30 users that we currently have now with the financial applications to now all users. So those licenses went up from 30 users to 150 users. So that's what the increase in that was for. And we're virtualizing to the desktops, so that's all the virtual desktop licensing that we're not going to need to keep up with on an annual basis. The other item is the EMC annual maintenance. EMC is the manufacturer of the storage array that has come with a virtualization project. We have one storage array here at Town Hall, and we have one at the police station that will be replicating each other. In case disaster recovery, one site goes down, the other site is already replicated with all the images and the data from the other site. That is the annual maintenance from the manufacturer to keep up with any updates in code, as well as any support that we may need, telephone support. That does not include any on-site in case, something really does happen to happen. But then the last one is just the secured socket layer. Those are the SSL certificates that we had to purchase in order to implement the virtualization project. What those are basically the URL addresses that allow us to connect remotely to the system.
Okay, thank you.
If anybody's off-site, they'll be able to log in remotely and access their data, their information, without actually having to be on-site.
Mr. Paulson?
Replication, you said that between you and the police station, or between town hall and the police station here, do we have any plans, or perhaps it's in the process of being done, where we would replicate outside of the town? In other words, to be sure that if it's a town-wide problem, that we're safe because it's out in Nebraska or something.
Yep, to a storage facility.
Yeah.
I have looked into that. It is quite expensive. And right now, I'm hitting you guys with a lot of things already and still trying to deal with our financial woes that we have. So even though we're replicating, even though we're currently storing backups to disk, we're also backing up to tape and taking the tapes off-site. Ideally, yes, I would love to have, off-site storage to a facility, Iron Mountain or someplace. The municipal IT from around the state have created a consortium. They meet once every other month. The state itself has created 2 data centers, one just outside of Boston and one in the western part of the state. Those data centers are basically vacant, waiting for a disaster to happen. We have been in communication with the state, trying to see if the state would allow local municipalities to utilize those data centers that are just sitting there doing nothing, to allow us to store our data off-site. Those communications and negotiations are still ongoing, but that's what we're looking at or hoping for. But yes, I would definitely love to have an off-site storage facility, where we back up, once a week or once a month,
How expensive is, you say it would be very expensive, how expensive is expensive?
For the amount of data that we're looking at somewhere around $500 to $800 a month.
$500 to $800 a month, aside from what you have for ENC here, where you're going back and forth from the police station.
Well, that is the annual maintenance with the manufacturer on the equipment, is support and updates, as to repairs and patches that come out on the equipment. The actual replication is being done internally between here and the police station for all our data, so that if one site goes down, the other site can continue maintaining up and running, and it would be just a matter of us, pointing to a different location, the end user.
Let me see if I understand you correctly. Are you saying that the replication outside of town, forgetting the police station of it, to take our data and/or the police department's data, the combined data, and sending it off to wherever, Nebraska, or would cost us only $800 a month?
It's the prices that I've been looking at and the quotes that I've been getting so far for the amount of data that we have so far. For the amount of data that we're looking to replicate and back up is $500 to $800. If we were to increase the amount of data that we have, include the school department storage array, for instance, or something, obviously the more data that you send, the higher the price is going to be. But for the amount of data that we have and that we're backing up, we're looking at, $500 to $800. It was about $500 for my site, including the police department. It's up to about $800 now.
Are other towns doing that?
Cities are. A lot of towns don't.
Sounds like cheap insurance to me.
It certainly is insurance. It's not something that, obviously you're also dealing with bandwidth. You're sending terabytes worth of data over your internet connection. So it's not something that you want to do on a daily basis. It's something that you would probably pick a Sunday evening, when hopefully, nothing's going on. But again, it's a fail-safe.
Yeah.
Mrs. Brown?
Matt, I see we've got a vacant spot. Now, we've never had an assistant, have we?
Yes.
We did.
The last person that filled that position has been going on 4 years now.
Okay.
The position was Actually, the funding for the position was removed under a former town administrator in order to fill his assistant position, to create an assistant position. And then the last couple of years, it's been funded as part-time person. We got as far as advertising last year, but we never actually interviewed or hired anybody.
Did we use the money that we had budgeted?
Last year's, the money that's in this year's current budget, fiscal 12, is still sitting there. We have not advertised this year.
So we haven't used it in another area of
Not
expense?
to my knowledge.
Mr. McDonald, you can do
No, go ahead, let Mr. Trudell go first.
Mr. Cattouli also has a question.
The last item that I had on the software issue on update of our computer system was an overrun of about $168,000.
Correct.
Has that number increased?
That's probably up to about 170 right now. There's been a couple of more bills that have come in.
And where does that number appear in your budget here?
That's $62,000 for the Microsoft licensing. That was split up into a 3-year payment. Is basically 124,000 of that.
That's the wrong one. Well, we're gonna play together nicely here. We're just, I hear another software. See it? It's right there.
Okay.
I don't know what you're looking at.
And that figure would be for fiscal 13 and 14.
The 124.
120,
That's what it is, but there's other items in
124,000.
there.
Of that, 170 would be,
There at least $46,000.
Yep.
Where is that?
you probably have to ask the town administrator.
I will
I
interpret
don't know
that
at this point.
I will interpret that response as that you're not allowed to speak about it.
It's out of my control.
Don't even go any further. I just get you in trouble. I don't want to do that.
I get last shot.
Mrs. Cattouli, you had a question?
Yeah, if, well, we could go back to the part-time or the assistant,
Yes.
okay? And maybe Dara can help me out with this. In the budget book, it's listed as a part-time at 20 hours at 23,009. And is your budget with the 53-1?
Yep.
Is that at a full-time? Is that what you're?
That was at a full-time position as of what the current personnel plan, or what the person had left at, step 1 at that grade rate.
Okay, so what you're looking really for is a full-time position? Is that what you're-
Well, I was looking for a full-time position. There are a number of projects that are still on the list. We're looking to automate 42 pumping stations in town. It's going to take time and resources just to install the software in those places, as well as they're looking at installing video in all those. We're looking at, trying to do something as far as document management. We're trying to implement a complaint tracking system, as well as, we still need to deal with the outdated equipment at the library. That was not included in this virtualization project. We have, we still need to try to automate, planning, zoning, and conservation. I'd like to try to get them implemented and automated to coincide with our building permit program. As well as we still have a number of older databases that we developed in-house 10 years ago, dog licensing, harbor service permits, all these types of things, software that needs to be addressed. Our license for VADAR financial applications is up July 1. We still haven't renewed that. Are we switching to a new vendor? That requires data conversions. All these types of things, require resources. You know, as we automate processes to take work away from departments, unfortunately, IT picks up the other side of that. You know, and video surveillance seems to be a big issue lately. You know, we're now installed video surveillance updated the video surveillance at the police station. We've installed video surveillance at the harbor master's office on the pier. We've installed video surveillance at the sewer department. The library is looking to install video surveillance. It takes time and resources. We're now GPS tracking the vehicles at the sewer department. You know, so now that that's starting, you know, I can see that implementing in expanding to municipal maintenance in all other town vehicles.
Can Derek follow up with that, Mr. Chairman?
Pardon?
Can Derek follow up as to whether you know, in this budget, it says vacant assistant grade 8, step 1, question mark, question mark, question mark. So he's looking at maybe a part-time position, is that what I'm interpreting here?
That could move it as a part-time position, because I think we did put it out last year. We did get a number of applications, but I don't think they met the needs.
We never ever actually got to the point of the interview process. By the time they wanted to do the interviews, it was 3 months later. Then there was confusion as to whether or not they wanted to send out the advertisement again for new applicants or continue on. We ran into some budget issues and it just never got filled.
Thank you.
My question,
One second. Mrs. Ross.
my question, Derek, is did we use the money for the salary for something else?
From last year?
Yes.
I don't believe we went into those wages for
I said
anything
no.
from your department.
It either went back to free cash, or at the end of the year, the town accountant may have done some transfers to transfer it to other departments that were short. Honestly, I don't know myself.
No transfer was done that I know of.
That would be.
Mr. McDonald, who's been waiting very patiently, everyone else I think has had a question too. Well, if you keep passing, you're never going to get over it. Recognized. Mr. Goodell.
You can bet I can get my shot at that.
The Finance Committee had the opportunity to sit down with the school committee to listen to some of their issues that dealt with the process. Is there anywhere in your budget that deals with interfacing, working with the school department? Because I know you're one man, that
No, there is not. Long story short, no.
Long story short.
The school department is without their network administrator and their technology director. They chose not to fill those positions, and now they're down to just a couple of techs, and then each building has its own first round, I guess, tech support people, but they actually maintain and oversee the labs that the students use. So they really can't leave those buildings. They've got classes going on. So that really leaves just their 2 techs that deal on their side, and they're overwhelmed on that part too. You know, I know there has been discussions in the past of thought process. I think it came up at one of the capital meetings, trying to combine the staffs into one department.
the reason I asked that question was, in listening to the school department, they indicated that they are in dire straits in regards to this. And now you tell me that their information technology director and the assistant aren't in their budget. Doesn't look good town-wise, what direction we're going, since you seem to be the only.
Well, you know, the town spends a lot of money on technology, you know. For us, it's a once-a-decade thing, you know, in the school department, they have to spend so much to keep their funding on an annual basis. I've actually been working with the superintendent over the last month about trying to get some type of an audit kicked off. He has asked me to do the audit for the school department. And I told him I am not able to do that audit for them, but I've been working with him to try to find, vendors to actually do an audit of their stuff so that he can have a physical report that says, here's where our deficiencies are, and here's what we need to do, whether it be replacing staff, whether it be training staff, whether it be hiring all new people. You won't know until that is done.
Thank you very much.
Mr. McDonald? I've got a decision.
You should have let me go first, because I had 3 questions at that point, and now it's kind of, I'll try to go slow. But first off, for the backup device and disaster recovery, they charge by the gigabyte. And if you can get it for $500 to $800, that's pretty reasonable, because I can assure you, we pay more than that at our place, and we don't have as much information as you have.
So it does get expensive.
It is extremely expensive.
Unfortunately, it's like, the advertisements you see on TV for a computer. Yeah, you can buy a computer for $400. You can't use it in a business environment.
Yeah.
And the same, you can get it for, $5 a month through Symantec, but you're talking about 50 megabytes. By the time you start gigging terabytes, it adds up.
Yeah, that's something we've realized over a period of time as we incur more data, more storage, and it costs us more money. So, and now that we're backing up 3 servers and we have a BDR on site, it's an extremely expensive thing. And you know me, I like IT, even though I sometimes get real confused by it. A couple more questions. Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe somebody up here knows it. Department of Revenue report, as well as the audit, recommends that you had an assistant. Is that correct?
Yes.
And yet we still have no assistant. We put it in the budget, but we don't have an assistant. How do we go about making sure that we correct that Department of Revenue hot point? And how do we go about that? Can we do anything as a finance committee, or?
Well,
That's sort of out of the,
Okay, well, it's in the budget, and we're
it's in the
still-
budget, but I
Okay.
think what you're asking is probably inappropriate to ask Mr. Underhill.
Okay, well, we'll ask that another
It should
time.
be asked to another, to the Board of Selectmen or to the town administrator.
I was sitting here quietly until you said that the Microsoft licenses were included in your software. I was at town meeting. Was that not part of the article that was approved? Was the software licenses were in the article?
That was to be included in the project, correct.
Okay, so you're now talking $162,000 of additional expenses over the $400,000 that we approved at town meeting.
Correct.
So you're talking $562,000 when we only approved $400,000.
Correct.
Okay. 'Cause
That's up to about 570 now.
That opens up another can of worms that's not budget, and I'll leave that one alone for now, but I just want to make sure that we were all talking about the same thing on that one. The other thing is, what are the plans, anything in the software have anything to do with the mail system and making it a much more easier thing to deal with?
The email?
Yes.
I had not planned on upgrading that. One of the things that we do have the ability with the new licensing agreement that we have with Microsoft is we could actually install our own Exchange server in-house and manage the email internally instead of externally.
So you're using hosted Exchange right now?
We're using a hosted Exchange server, correct. Our ISP is actually hosting it, and they're hosting it for the school department as well as the police department's emails as well. It was the off-the-state contract, it was the cheapest one that we could find at the time. Yes, there are some ongoing issues. Some people do have a tough time working with it. But no, at this moment in this budget, I did not include anything for changing our email server.
I'll let you off. Thank you very much. So you answered my question.
Mr. Paulson?
I have 2 questions that immediately come to mind, and they're really not joined at the hip. I do want to touch on this DATAR. You mentioned DATAR, we have to renew the license on July 1st of this year.
To my knowledge, the contract expires July 1st.
Do we have an idea as to what it will cost us going into the next fiscal year? And tied to that, is it in the budget?
Yes. What I did was I did speak to them, and our annual maintenance would not change. with them, which is the $52,507 under other purchase services, actually highlighted in blue. That is the annual maintenance for Vadar. I'm assuming at this point, we're now halfway through January, we're not changing our financial applications. I would hope that, if we were changing our financial applications, that we would go through a whole assessment process, an interview process that would include all departments, and to do that in 5 months, as well as a complete conversion of data, is unrealistic. So I have included in my budget the annual maintenance to renew that contract at least for 1 year. Obviously, we have a new accountant coming in, or a firm. My suggestion normally is, every few years, you should take a look to see what else is out there. You never know when something is better or not, but, it'd be really unrealistic to switch vendors and do a complete assessment as well as a data conversion in less than 5 months.
Okay. Thank you for that. My second question gets back to a question I asked Ms. Miller when she was here, and something that I've talked to you about in years gone by, and that's the use and the re-implementation of our GIS system, which she seems quite enthused about. Is there anything that, from your standpoint, that you can see, it's not in any of your budgeting here, but is there anything that you can see that's being beneficial from your standpoint?
I do have included in my budget here, and it's actually under other professional services, the annual subdivision updates is $2,300. That's about what it costs us now. I have kind of taken the reins since we've been without a town planner for so long. The town planner is actually in charge of GIS, unless his job description has changed. I don't think so. So while we were without a town planner, I had at least to keep up with the annual assessor's changes of the subdivisions, so at least it was getting implemented. The state has now, through Mass Highways and Mass GIS, have contracted out half a dozen firms to go out and regenerate all the GIS system for the whole state, for every municipality. We had been working with them last summer to get our records up to date and straight with them and verify mismatched types of information. We did run into a snag where there was a question of our borders from what we have based on the deeds in our border lines to where Plymouth and Carver have their border lines. There's about 100 feet discrepancy. They have been working together between basically the three communities as well as themselves to try to straighten out that issue on the GIS. That's been holding up. I have heard that data will be soon released to the local planning consortiums, in this case, our case, SERPED, will get our data, and then they will send it down to us. The state's goal was to get every municipality on GIS, including the smaller communities that didn't have it, to give them access to a GIS and put everybody at the same level, same scale that they were using on their GIS. So now that has been pretty much completed. As soon as we get it, then we will sit down, obviously, with the town planner, the assessor, and any other departments, and discuss what it is, how we want to implement it, and move forward. Do we need a new plotter? Do we need a new digitizer ourselves? Do we need, obviously, I would love to be able to get a plotter that allows us to scan, these large maps. We've got file cabinets and file cabinets of maps sitting around, of the town pier, buildings, roads. Every time somebody submits an as-built plan or, building plans for a new house, it would be nice to just scan those into a database somewhere, link it to the GIS, so that, you click on it, you see exactly where the house is, you see exactly where, what the building permits are. But that's something that, we need to start moving forward. Unfortunately, the new town planner is, being part-time, has been trying to catch up with years of not having a planner, and a few projects that are going on in town, like Walmart and the Route 28, Route 6 construction project that's coming up by the state, it's tough to dig our hands into something that hasn't been updated in a number of years. So now the state is doing that for us and taking away that cost. As soon as we get that back, we'll be able to start utilizing it.
Any other questions? Mr. Underhill, I want to thank you. You're
Okay.
a very busy man.
Any questions on the communication side, or is that pretty much straightforward?
Communication is pretty much the cell phones, correct?
Each department pays for their own cell phones. Last year, a couple of years ago, we moved it from departments' responsibilities to administration. This current fiscal year in 12, we moved it back to the department's responsibilities. Obviously, cell phones here only includes my cell phone, the IT tech at the police department, a cell phone, and that's it.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, that was also noted in the Department of Revenue report that Matt can't look at all the cell phone use. Charge the departmental leadership team to do that for us because
Right,
they're...
so spread it out, that's fine.
correct.
We're all set. And the main phone system comes through communications here.
The repair and maintenance is on the annual maintenance, for the phone systems in town. Obviously, telephone, that's lines. We have reverse 911 now, that we've had for the last couple of years. That's out of here. Then obviously, the internet access, that's our ISP. For here, the police station, that also includes all the email boxes that are associated with it.
It's pretty straightforward.
So,
Any questions? Seeing none.
thank you.
Again,